Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this third in the talks on karma, cause and effect, in our series on the 4 ways of changing the mind, the 4 great thoughts. In the last video, we looked at the fact that what we do, the karmas we create, fall into these 3 areas of body, speech and mind, and that body and speech karmas involve an interaction with other people and the world around us, and mental karma is different. It is internal, it's personal, it ripens differently. It's different. Today, let's go on to look a little more closely at physical karma, body karma. Generally, when we talk about karma, then we have the things not to do and the things that we are advised to do. And these give us our Buddhist ethics and morality. Buddhist morality does not come from above, as in the religions of the book, it's not revealed. It comes through the very nature of actions, of karma. The very nature of some of the things we do is corrupt, is harmful, it's not good. It hurts other people, it hurts the world. It comes from a damaged part of our mind. We call a defiled part of our mind, an afflicted part of our mind, something negative. And then, most particularly, in the long term, the consequences that come back through the power of karma, cause and effect, will be suffering for the ones who does them. When the Buddha taught karma, first and foremost, he taught us the things not to do, because they're the things that cause the suffering for ourselves and others. So first things first, first priority, we must stop the suffering, stop hurting ourselves, stop hurting each other, stop hurting this world in which we and billions of other beings live. When we take refuge, the refuge in the Buddha Dharma says that the very nature of Dharma is not to harm. And once we've taken refuge in the Dharma, we try our very, very best never to harm anyone, including ourselves, anymore. So here we're looking at the harm that can be done with the body. And we'll look at it in 3 areas. The first is through damaging or destroying the bodies of other beings, harming them. The second is through harming their lives, through taking, stealing their possessions. And the third area is the harm we can do through unethical, immoral, sexual activity. We'll look at these a bit. As I said at the beginning of these talks, we won't go through all of the details of karma because you'll find a lot of those in the textbooks. My main hope is to help you reflect on the material you find in those books. These lectures are a complement to your studies. They are not a total study in themselves. I think one thing we need very much to appreciate is how much we are just one part of life, and how life is truly infinite. And being just one part of that network of life, We have responsibilities. We have duties. And we must expect life to react to what we do. I'm sure many of you have heard the Buddha's teaching, which says it is like a dream. And in many of these talks, I do point out that when the Buddha said it is like a dream, he didn't say it is a dream. And so we can develop the dream metaphor. The main thing is, the dream's marvelous because we know what it's like when you wake up, and then we can look back and see what a delusion the dream was. And so the Buddha has gone to the next step. He's woken up from this level of reality. And he sees how deluded so much of what we take as true is. So the dream analogy helps us to understand the Buddha's teaching. But when it comes to karma, we must recognize the difference between dream and waking state. You see, when you're in a dream, you're entirely in your own head. It's just you. Everything and everyone you experience is an image in your own consciousness, full stop. In the waking state, there is not just me or you. There are endless. You've probably seen, as far as there is space, there are infinite numbers of beings. They are all a stream of consciousness, just like I am, just like you are. And a stream of karma, like I am, like you are. And our karmas interact. It's not easy to understand because the way we experience that is, again, entirely in our heads. We project onto the other people, the circumstances. We filter the information. We have an entirely subjective view of the universe. But when we are awake, we are part of a universe involving many other beings. And the key point of being a Buddhist is to respect every other form of sentient life. To give it the same respect you give yourself. Every life is a future Buddha, as far as we're concerned. Every sentient being is a past mother, friend, dear one. And so we learn to respect them, to see them like that, no matter what form they happen to be in at present. And because each one has their life as precious as our own life, then we respect that and we try to help them in their lives to live long, fulfilled lives, to bring happiness into their lives, and certainly not to damage them. So although we can look into the details of karma, and we can do that from a very self-centered way, we just don't want to make bad karma because we're scared of the repercussions for ourselves, fair enough. And better, we can do that in the bodhisattva way, where we really do look on every being with love and kindness. And then when that's the way, how could you hurt them anyway? It sounds very reasonable, but in practice it's not so straightforward. So when we come to consider the physical action, then the first one is harming the life, the body of other beings. The worst case being to actually kill them. And if not to kill them, then to cause them injury in one way or another. And as far as precepts are concerned in Buddhism, then in order to not do the very worst of things, then the first and main precept, as you probably know, is not to murder another human being. But the idea behind Buddhist morality and behind karma is that every time we do damage the life of another human being or destroy the life of another sentient being. Every time we are making karma that inevitably will come back to us, the person who did the harm, for whatever reason, in the future as suffering. So harming other beings makes no sense whatsoever, whichever way you look at it. It hurts them, and although it may bring us some short-term satisfaction, for whatever reason, if it's a release of anger, if it's revenge, if it's to get rid of a mosquito that's been bugging you, if it's to get rid of little aphids on your plants in the garden, whatever it is, although you might get some short-term satisfaction, in the long term, every time we damage the life force of another being, we are creating future suffering for ourselves. Now we have this age of, what do they call them? Google glasses. I think soon we should invent karma glasses that have on the side a tiny screen connected to amazing computers in a cloud somewhere that see what you're doing, see and hear, and they give you an instant analysis of the future karmic consequences that you see. It's like rear-view mirrors in a car. As you're aware of what you're doing physically, what you're saying, at the same time you can see the outcome. Now, if that was the case, gosh, that would be quite sobering for many people. If they could see what they're doing to themselves through their harmful actions to others. Well, that's not been invented yet. All we have is mindfulness, which is our rear-view mirror, remaining mindful of the Buddha's teachings on karma, cause and effect. And because of that, respecting the life of others. I'm sure many of you will think, yeah, but I don't want to harm others. I don't want to kill beings. But these days, it's not that straightforward. And I'm sure many of you have read our brilliant 17th Jawakarmapa's teachings in books like The Heart is Noble, or heard his teachings on video or live. And he explains that in this interconnected world, everything we eat, wear, buy from the shops involves other people and sometimes, or other sentient beings, and sometimes this also involves huge suffering. So we might not want others to suffer, but in the sort of world we live in these days, which is not a tiny village cut off from everything else, where you see the immediate consequences of what you're doing, wearing, eating, using. It's not like that. So now we have to accept the fact that our karma is to be born in an age where we are connected and where we have this human intelligence. Of course, you can choose to sleep. It's your choice. We can just go through life from birth to death and just do what comes naturally, what everyone else does. We can follow the herd. But that doesn't annihilate the karma that you make. It means basically we're living on a level of intelligence that's equated with animal intelligence in the Buddhist teachings. The suffering of animals is that they cannot reflect on these moral and ethical issues affecting the mind and affecting karma. We can. And we have a duty to do it. And by neglecting that duty, we will not shut down the power of karma. We just expose ourselves to its ravages in the future. So there are big questions nowadays, like being vegetarian. I'm not saying you have to be vegetarian or not vegetarian. There are rather complicated arguments on either side, because even the production of vegetables, grains, and so on involves the deaths of many insects, animals, sentient beings. There is no black and white issue, but we, each of us, have to think about it now. Take a stand. Work out for ourselves what will be the best thing I can do where I live with my own life, so as to harm other lives the least possible. Why would we harm other beings' lives? Well, that's where you go into the details in the books. I don't want to spend time with it here. You can look, but it will be the same for all of the different karmas we'll look at, of body, speech and mind. Sometimes we can do it through desire. So in the past, people would kill animals because they wanted to wear their skins as furs. They wanted the taste of their flesh to eat. It's mainly through desire. And then we can kill in war, in conflict, through anger, or even with tiny things like the famous mosquitoes or the midges in Scotland. We get so upset that in the end we can't stop ourselves from killing that small being. Or we can kill through stupidity, because we just don't, as I said just now, we don't think about things. So our life, indirectly, is causing pain, suffering, death. Or the worst case of stupidity is those religions that make animal sacrifices. When we are looking at killing as physical karma, we are looking at being. You know, these three great verbs in the English language: to be, to have, and to do. Being, just existing, is very important for us, as it is for these animals. And I hope you've seen these films like Microcosmos and so on, that take you right down into the animal world. And you see that even though their lives are so different, sometimes so basic, they're doing, well, not that different a thing from what we humans do. They're making a home. They're trying to have enough food to eat, to survive. They are finding partners to live with or to mate with. They're defending their territory, establishing some space. A lot of our life is a more sophisticated form of doing that, but it's the same basic functions. So when we see those films, or that take us underwater into the oceans, into the jungles, the forests, it helps us feel more for the reality of each and every sentient being. Those of you who have a pet, a dog or a cat, have a great privilege, because there you see this other being, in one way like us, happy to be happy, unhappy to be unhappy, but then leading such a different life. If you're a cat or a dog doing what dogs do, or a human, it's different. But it's their world and it's our world, just like you have your world and the person 3 or 4 streets away that you don't even know has a different world, a different life. We respect all life. So on the negative side, we don't harm the being of others. On the positive side, we try to care for the sick, help people to live long, make their lives comfortable, fulfilled, happy, meaningful lives. But beside being, there is having. And having is an important part of our life, as I'm sure you know, because very often our happiness is in terms of what we have or don't have. If you ask many people, what would make you happy? Very often they think in terms of a bigger house, a car, a place, a possession. So we look also at stealing. It's a physical activity, it's something physically we can do in a material, physical world where we take away, either by actual stealing, by theft, by robbery, or by trickery, through banks, on the internet, through all sorts of ways. We, through greed, take the goods of others, and because of that we're taking their happiness. I'm sure many of you who've thought about property and possession have realized what an illusion it is. How can one say that a piece of land belongs to me, and then when somebody dies and the land is transmitted down to their heirs, as far as the land is concerned, nothing changes one bit, but somewhere in a notary's office on a piece of paper, it now belongs to somebody else. It's a total illusion. An object is an object, a person is a person. The belonging is all in the head. But nevertheless, the reason that it's part of Buddhist morality is because that notion of possessions within a functioning society is something that's to do with our happiness and suffering. There are rules, there are conventions. And so theft depends a bit on the social conventions, but the idea is if appropriating something causes somebody else suffering because they think it's theirs, then that is a harmful action. And usually the reason we want it is because of clinging, greed, jealousy, all of these negative things. It's poison in the first place. It's poison in the second place because it hurts somebody else. And it's poison in the third place because it comes back to us as just what we don't want, the opposite of what we wanted, poverty in the future. It's very, very funny, the power of karma. By stealing, we actually make ourselves poor in the future. By giving away what we have, we make ourselves rich in the future. By not harming the mosquitoes and the bugs, we ourselves gain long life, good health in the future. There's so much sense in it. The third area, main area, where we can harm others' physical existence, or where our physical existence causes damage to others, is through impure, immoral, sexual activity. There are two main areas in the Buddha's teaching. One of them is about natural energies, maybe that we're not aware of so much at the beginning. I think as time goes by, you meditate more, you learn more, you become much more aware of them. So we learn that certain times, certain places, have a kind of special sacred energy, and sex isn't appropriate then. Just like sex isn't appropriate when you're visible, and other people can see you because it puts ideas into their head. That's sort of common sense. Some of the Buddha's teachings are about the natural energy that's there, because sex is a very powerful and energetic thing, the sex drive. It's enormous. It's a huge factor all over the world. Societies vary so much over our planet, but this need for sex, for companionship and so on is something you'll find most places. And for many people, it's often the most important thing in life. It's very important in terms of happiness and suffering. So it's to do with the energies that are involved in what you're doing as part of a universe around you. And the very nature of what you're doing is untimely, is out of sync. It's going to come back as suffering. There's another area which is to do with social conventions. This means, to put it simply, that if what you're doing is going to cause suffering through the way people think, then it is a harmful action. Whereas the same action in a different society may not be a problem for anyone. So if you have a monogamous society, like the traditional societies in many places in the past, where people settled down for life with a companion, then to break up that relationship, to break up that family, was something that was traumatizing, caused a lot of suffering. So when a third party comes in, sleeps with one of the couple, and then that gradually leads into all the complications, that becomes an immoral action because of the whole way society is structured and the way people will react. If you have a totally free living village or society, as you find in certain places, or like in the times of the hippies in the 60s and 70s, then there the convention is different. And there isn't the same or similar damage. We don't need to make it complicated. The guideline is very simple. If what you're doing through your sexuality is causing suffering for others, then that is negative karma. It's karma that hurts the other person just now. It means that you are not mastering your own desires, your own sexual drive. You're using it for self-centered ends that hurt others. It will come back to you as just what you don't want in future lives. You won't find the companionship, the relationship, the quality of sexual relationship, whatever it is that you would like to find. It just gets worse and worse. It's a complicated area. There are many things to look into. We won't go any further than that today. What I'd rather you did was to think about it yourself with all of these teachings, not just listen to Ken on a video, but you take the material, you think about it, look into it, find your own conclusions. But the point is, without any doubt, our sexuality can cause pain and suffering to others. And let's not even mention the obvious things such as rape and so on, which are obviously terrible, horrible things to do. So here, as in harming life, stealing, and now with sexual activity, we're considering this physical existence that we have, that we are just now. And we only want to use it for good. Whatever this bag of bones, meat, hair, eyes, senses, whatever it is, whatever opportunities it gives us for as long as we live, we just want that to bring goodness and happiness to all of the endless human beings, animals, insects and other sentient beings, not to mention the invisible beings that most people can't see, ghosts, spirits, devas, local energetic divinities or spirits. We try to live in a way that brings nothing but goodness, to be more and more mindful of the way this body of ours can cause damage, and to reflect at length and from the beginning do everything we can to restrain our actions so that we never, ever hurt anyone ever again. I think we'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much. Please go well wherever you are.